good to see you all, and obviously we are getting close to something pretty historical here in a couple of days. We've got Hurricane IRMA, of course, taking aim on Florida. But here in Texas, we've had a cold, dry air mass move southward, and we've had some cold temperatures. We got down to 59 here last night. And let's see what it looks outside on the, that's not the live cam. Let me bring up the live cam. Yeah, there we go. I'm not sure what that star is. I guess we'll figure that out sometime. I know it's not Venus. Venus is a morning star right now. So anyway, let's head right into the charts and see what we got going on. So there's IRMA out there in the Atlantic, and latest estimate, 8 p.m. there we got a slight weakening to 175 knots, but that's quite normal due to eye wall replacement cycles and other changes in the storm. We're going to see that pretty much oscillate around the 180 mark for at least the next 24 to 36 hours. Central pressure 919, that puts it in the Cat 5 range. And let me go to the satellite data here. And go straight to the raw data. Now that's the image I have there of the storm. And let me reload some of the images here. Make sure we've got the very latest. So those will be coming in here shortly. And let me see who we got in chat. Pretty busy. We've got Carl Berghoff and Sue M. Let me give you the latest frame here. There we go. That's 8 p.m. Central. That's going to be as of about 9 minutes ago. We got Alex Front and Ryan Toomeys. Of course, Ryan is right there in the thick of it. He says, good evening from South Florida. The storm will be absolute catastrophic for South Florida. Brian Harp is with us, and Ron Chalfant in Southern California. Sue M there is in Indiana. WBPFLS, good to see you here. Felix Lopez in Buenos Aires, flying back to Delta on Atlanta. And you may very well see some of the storm there from the air. We have Justin Pulliam here, and Burl H., Calio Delphi. Carl says mandatory evacuation is in place. Fun with Tech in Texas is here. Veo Jode, and good to see you back. And Raquel Clark in Jacksonville. And I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly. So Adam Davis, Brian Ray, good to see you. And Dwayne Ward, beautiful day in Maryland today. Nikki H, good to see you also. Okay, let's check it out. Latest position. Let me get this. So I've got the bottom part of the application on here. I've got about 21.3 and 72.1 for the center. And what I've done is I've transposed that over to the model track estimates, and this is these are the 12Z positions. So basically these are the 12Z runs, and this mark right here is where the center of the storm is. Now, one thing that's very apparent is the Turks and Caicos Islands. They're located about 41 miles from the center of the storm, and that's pretty much going to put them there in the worst of the eye wall, the forward motion of the storm, and the eye wall kind of set up like that. So that is definitely going to be bad for them as it continues to move northwest. These other islands here, those are going to be in bad shape. Now, the lines that you see on the map here, these are the GFS ensemble members, and I believe it runs at something like 572 waves, quite a bit coarser than the usual 1500. That's the high resolution run. But what I'm going to do here, you can see that we've got a lot of variation on movement from the different members. There's different initial conditions and I believe different physics packages. Let me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to weed out the outliers. So you're going to see me get rid of the ones that do not appear to be verifying. So we got rid of 2. There's 3. There's 4 gone. This other one is pretty far out. That's going to be 5. Going to drop the south one here is for 6. And drop this one. This is going to be 7. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to find the ensembles that are verifying the most closely. Okay, so we're just about there. I'm going to drop one more. And that leaves us, I'm going to drop, no, I'll probably keep that. Okay, so we've got about 10 members here. And you can see that the track, all of one, we've got one outlier heading for the Bahamas, but the rest of them are going for landfall right there in Florida. So this is certainly a dire situation. The grouping is about the strongest in this area right here. So if we take a mean of all of those, maybe like a mass-weighted mean, that's going to bring it right in this area here. So this is according to the GFS. Yeah, last night I saw grouping just south of Miami there. So again, that would be pretty bad. If we get a landfall in this area right here in the Everglades, let me see what we're going to be looking at. Radius of 35 miles for Homestead. So yeah, that would put Homestead in the eye wall for sure. And then Miami and Fort Lauderdale, that would be a little bit further out. Okay, anyway, let's look at the European model. So I'm going to drop all of these GFS members. And there's 50 members in the European ensemble model. I'm going to add all these in here. So just give me just a second. I've been finding this very good way of forecasting the motion, because the high resolution model is not necessarily the best one, and I've seen some very large errors with it. And the ensemble mean seems to have a much better handle on the forward movement. It's been showing the westward progression a little bit better. And now we've got all 50 members there. And you can see that there's pretty good grouping right there on the storm 12 hours out. Okay, so the spread of tracks, just as it is with the 50 ensemble members, pretty much anywhere from Nassau to about 4 of them off the west coast of Florida there. So let me do the same thing there and drop the ensemble members that are not verifying. And this is about the best we can do for forecasting, because I certainly can't second guess the dynamics and the wind flow structure in the atmosphere. Sometimes it's better just to say I know nothing. So I'm going to drop about 25 of these members, and this will give me the most accurate coarse resolution models here that are that appear to be verifying 12 hours out. So they're slowly going away. We're thinning out the outliers. This appears to be off track too. So a lot of the forecasting that we do from 72 hours out to 180 hours out is smart use of the models and trying to find where we have problems and inconsistencies, poor verification, poor initialization, and so on. And then we drop these, like what I'm doing right now. Okay, we're getting closer, and we've got pretty good grouping. I think that might be about 30 models there. I'm just going to go ahead and drop that one also and take out this one outlier here. And possibly this other one here. And let's see. I'm going to take out a few of these others. So these are all the European models. This is the European ensemble, and I think this also runs at about 500 waves. Maybe somebody out there knows or can look that up. I'm kind of curious. The high-resolution model runs at about 1500 at least. Okay, I think we're just about there. So we've thinned out about maybe 20 to 30 ensembles that are showing very poor verification. Okay, so yeah, let's just go with that there. So now we've got pretty good grouping on the storm, and what we see here is a little bit more of a southward progression of the storm closer to the Cuban coast, and you can see there's a pretty good grouping there in the very same area of southern Florida. So hang on, let me fix the preview window. Okay, so we do have a little bit larger spread. I've been seeing this on the past runs, some outliers keeping the storm out to sea there, but going with this, the mass weighted average would be somewhere in this area right here. So I'm not too sure what that's going to mean exactly for landfall here. There's going to be some weakening as it comes on shore, but I think the brunt of the storm surge and the higher winds would impact the southern Miami area pretty seriously. Basically, you're shoving the water forward, kind of like shoving a big wave in a tub of water there, and it all is heading into this bay right here, and that's going to mean bad news there. So the radius, assuming it makes a landfall in this area, it's going to be about 36 miles, and that's going to be just outside of the eye and in the more severe part of the wind core there. Okay, let me add on the actual high-resolution European model. You're going to see this flash on. So you see that right there. That's the high-resolution 1534 wave, or whatever it is. A high-resolution model. Let me do the same thing with the GFS. You're going to see that flash on. So look at that. The high-resolution GFS going a lot further east, and it was doing that last night also. Okay, I was trying to get my webcam working. I don't know what's wrong with it. I've got the lights on and everything. I wish we could get a webcam that is not so finicky. I'm just going to try plugging in and replugging in and see what happens. Anyway, yeah, this is going to be definitely bad news for Florida, and especially on the right side of the storm. That's going to get the highest wind speeds right there. And also the forward right quadrant there, that's going to be the prime area for tornadoes as the outer spiral bands start working into Florida. So that's going to be another threat. I don't know if that's been talked about very much there. But anyway, you can see most of the storm there, the hurricane being affected by the Bermuda High, which is in place out there. And as it clears the edge of that Bermuda High, that's where we're going to see the recurvature like we're showing here in Florida. Okay, let me take one more look at the camera and see if I can figure out why that's not working. Well, it's pretty annoying. I was hoping to have some video of myself in here. All right, let's see. Let me go through the chat here and take a look. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the latest hurricane frame here. There we go. This is the infrared imagery. This is enhanced to show the colder tops, and you can see the stronger Iowa here. It's got a very annular structure, showing a little bit of a spiral, spiral elements coming into it. Looking at chat here, Brian Ray in Melbourne, Florida, 5 miles from the coast there. Michael Burrell joining us. WBPFLS, no shutters yet. Raquel Clark in Vermont. So you are certainly going to be safe up there. Got Jeff Lockwood, Dwayne Ward up in Maryland. Beautiful day. Nikki H. And just looking through the chat here. I-95. Yeah, that's the other thing. Let's take a look at the traffic. There is a lot of evacuation going on right now. And let's take a look and see how bad it is at this time. So it is good that people are heeding the evacuation orders rather than waiting to the last minute. So we're bringing up the traffic, and there it is. Looks like a lot of problems right there on I-75. And looks like a few clear stretches on the path there from Miami up to Orlando. But things get pretty packed around the Ocala and Gainesville area. So, I don't know, for some reason looks like I-95 is flowing a little bit better today. And right around the Miami area itself, things seem to be moving pretty well. So if I was heading out, I would probably be looking at I-95 there. Brian Ray was able to buy a generator, 2 5-gallon gas cans, 2 cases of water. Good idea. Yeah, I've got a generator here myself since we're about 15 miles out in the country. And what's funny is as soon as I bought the generator, we stopped having power problems, so haven't gotten much use out of it. Eric Hall says most gas stations are closed in Spring Hill, Florida. He grabbed the last can of tuna fish. Shelves are empty and no bottled water. And those of you in Florida who are staying, be sure that you fill your bathtub. And you can use that, of course, to flush the toilet or boil water if necessary. When I lived in the Philippines, I went through a lot of typhoons In fact, I was looking at the hurricane seasons when I lived there, and most of the storms that hit I don't even remember, since there was so many of them. And that's what we always did. We filled the bathtub to have emergency water, and for potable water, just grab any containers you have, and that will stay good for quite a while. Cthulhu says, if I lived anywhere in the serious storm surge threat area and had an opportunity to leave early, I would do so ASAP. Definitely a wise decision there. Megan John up there in Minnesota. Veo Joe asks if it's normal for hurricanes to have such high winds for such a length of time. Absolutely. We've got a lot of conditions that are favoring the storm, upper level divergence. We've got good ocean heat content, sea surface temperatures being a reflection of that. And once we've got all that massive latent heat release going, there's pretty much nothing stopping it. Let me try to pull up an ocean heat content map. We haven't looked at that in a while. And I don't have all these bookmarked very well, so yeah, no, OHC ocean heat that will get you there. And you can think of that kind of as, it's kind of like thickness in the atmosphere. It's kind of a layer. You can think of it kind of as a layer average of temperature. So if there's churning and overturning, then you will still have quite a bit of heat coming up to the surface if the OHC is pretty high there. It's probably a good way to explain that. Anyway, yeah, this is the map we have for the 7th. This is today. And what we're seeing here is values along the path in the 80 to 90 kilojoules per square centimeter range. And that's definitely enough to support a Cat 5 storm. And you can see we've got this area right around the Bahamas, 125 to 150. And I'm kind of curious what kind of impact that's going to have on the storm there. I don't know if that's just a localized anomaly there, but that would certainly add to the energy potential in the storm there as it crosses the straits and approaches Florida here. And then just off the Florida coast, looks like we've got 75 down to 50, so there will probably be a little bit of weakening also as the outer bands start coming onto land and we start getting the effects of friction starting to grind the storm down a bit. Okay. Let's take a look at the polar orbiter data. Bring this up to September 7th. And there's a look at our superstorm just north of the Dominican Republic. Kind of hard to see the eye. The eye looks kind of clouded there, but there it is. From Terra, yeah, there's a much better look at it. Can see stratocumulus, a lot of low clouds here. What we have is a lot of subsidence in the eye. There's sinking motion going downward. And that's kind of a reflection of all the intense wind in the eye wall rising and spreading out. Some of it finds its way into the center of the storm and is forced down to the surface. And we can see some very warm temperatures and very intense hurricanes like this, even up at 5 to 10,000 feet. We can see temperatures in the upper 80s and even close to 90 there. So we have a pretty strong inversion right there in the eye, and just low-level cumulus, 2 to 3,000 feet. And let me take a look at the Suomi satellite. Yeah, that one looks cloudy also. So I think probably the best view we have of the storm is from Terra, and there it is about 6 or 7 hours ago. Okay, on to the more boring stuff. Actually, we'll look at the NHT track. Let's do that. So there we go. There's the NHC forecast. You can see that that track is pretty close to Miami. And yeah, you can. The impacts on Miami would be catastrophic. Even working with the ensemble data, like I showed you about 10 minutes ago, we're definitely looking at a worst case scenario for Miami. I think the only way it could be worse is if it's coming, I don't know, if it's coming from more from the east, I think we would be dealing with a lot more shallow water shaping the wind field there. There's a lot more open ocean in this area. So I don't know, perhaps this is the most severe outcome here. But yeah, pretty good. Very high likelihood of this coming right up into the Miami area. I'm going to go back to the European data like I'm showing you here, and the tightest grouping of the most accurate ensemble members in this area right here, and that would suggest landfall right in this area here of Florida. So that's going to be right around Key Largo and possibly the Homestead area. And anywhere within about 40 to 50 miles of the eye there, devastating impacts. So if you're in the Miami area, this is not a storm you want to mess around with here. This is this is looking to be a very serious situation here. Okay, yeah, the more boring charts. Let's just run through this real quick and see what's going on. There's the surface analysis, thanks to our friends up in Canada. High pressure across the Midwest, and this is an old front that came through the Midwest, and we've cooled things down. Like I said, we had 59 here last night, so this is kind of a dome of cool air spreading southward. There's the front right there through Florida, and then we've got things cooling down up in Alaska, Yukon. Looks like a bit of a polar air mass developing there in the western high Arctic. So we could see some of that come southward, although I think if we have a very strong zonal flow, that will keep a lot of that cold air locked up there in Canada. Upper air charts looking like this tonight, 200 millibars, showing a very meridional pattern. Got a cutoff high here in Idaho, so very warm conditions likely right there. And we've seen the wildfires there in the west coast. Big problem there under this ridging. Very strong northerly flow across the Midwest, and that's bringing some of that cool air southward. And this is what's going to add to the recurvature there of IRMA, the very strong westerly flow. That's what causes recurvature when we have a very strong positive zonal component, which means there's very strong west to east flow. And when we have that through a deep layer, at least through about half of the troposphere, that will result in a motion that has an eastward component there. So once it gets caught up in that, that's where we are going to see recurvature there. So things in the Carolinas, not too clear at this point, so we're going to have to probably wait a couple days for that to firm up. Okay, let's see. We've done the satellite already. I guess we'll look at the forecast here. And I did want to show you one other forecast. This is from the GFS. I saw this from tropicaltidbits.com. This is a simulated brightness temperature. So this is probably what IRMA would look like moving up the coast there. So this is a forecast for 66 hours from Sunday morning. Now the Monday morning run, of course, is going to look a lot different. No, I'm sorry, this is valid Sunday. Initialized 18Z. Yeah, okay, this is Yeah, this is valid data here from 18Z this afternoon. So anyway, that's just kind of a glimpse of what we have coming down the pipe here. I'm going to bring up the GFS. This is going to be the high-resolution GFS model. So let's take a look at what we're looking at here. This is going to be the forecast on when we do the webcast tomorrow night for Friday. The storm will be just between Cuba and the Bahamas. Let me bring this down so you can see the date and time. There's just not a good way to fit that in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom this in on the southeast U.S. Yeah, let's see if we can zoom it in like that. Okay, so for tomorrow night, we're going to start seeing some of the northeasterly flow in advance of IRMA. Then by Saturday morning, looks like some of the spiral bands possibly starting to come on shore. And then by the time we do the webcast Saturday, things are going to be pretty busy. You can see the storm out in the straits between Cuba and Florida. And it looks like we're looking at landfall overnight, Saturday morning into Sunday, early Sunday. Yeah, I guess we're going to have this coming on shore Sunday morning here. So this is Sunday morning. We're looking at landfall there in the Key West area. And very likely I'm going to do a kind of a marathon webcast as this comes on shore. So I will be up Saturday night looking at the storm. And wow, look at that. There's the center of the storm working its way just pretty much right through the western Miami suburbs. This is Sunday at about 2 p.m. Eastern. And then it appears that we're going to see the storm heading back out into the ocean a little bit. I don't know too much about this path. I think we could see a little bit more recurvature, especially with as it encounters the westerlies further north. And then we're going to see possible impacts in Georgia and I think the South Carolina area and possibly North Carolina could run the risk of seeing some of this hurricane wind here. So we'll just have to wait and see on this. But for now, the deterministic high-resolution GFS bringing the storm into Georgia there. And fortunately, the movement through Florida and Georgia is pretty fast. So it doesn't look like too much of a heavy rain impact. And looks like by Tuesday afternoon, it's already up in Tennessee. Then we see it dissipating there in the Mississippi area. So it's very fortunate we don't have a Harvey situation up on us. But the wind is going to be severe. And of course, the storm surge there. So let me see if we can bring up the European model. This is going to be the European high-resolution model. Earlier, we looked at the ensembles. However, this is the higher resolution 1500 wave model here. So we're looking at resolution of about maybe, I'm guessing about 3 or 4 kilometers possibly. So there it is, 927 landfall. So that's going to be just in the very high Cat 4 range, going for landfall a little bit further west in the Everglades, and then a track right up through the middle of Florida. So we could see extensive wind damage through the Florida peninsula itself if that pans out. And then very similar picture of the storm decaying in Tennessee, in northern Mississippi and northern Alabama. And then just a quick look at the extended forecast for next week. Looks like low pressure up in Canada. This will keep a lot of the cold air locked up. We are lacking the deep southerly flow associated with the Bermuda High due to the disruption from the circulation of IRMA there. So we're going to have kind of like a north flow into Texas. Things will still be a little bit dry. And then for later in the period, looks like we've got some cold air coming southward around the 17th. So let me kick over to the GFS. Yeah, we'll look at this one here. This is sea level pressure and dew point. So you can see plenty of moisture there in advance of IRMA. There's the landfall, and now you can see the drier air being wrapped into the circulation as it moves into the Jacksonville area Monday morning. And it looks like that's a little bit late getting wrapped into the circulation. So this is probably going to go through much of Florida as a very strong storm. Friction, of course, will reduce the impact somewhat, but we could see extensive damage all the way up to Orlando with a path like this. Now we see the drier air being wrapped into the circulation. Things die down quickly over Georgia. And that's what will kill off the storm. And you can see dew points there in the lower 60s around Atlanta, dying off as a tropical storm in that area Monday night, and then moving into the Memphis and yeah, basically the Memphis area there by midweek. And then after that, we get some cold air moving southward around the 15th. GFS had expected a little bit of a cold air outbreak coming southward. It looks a little bit weaker here on the GFS, but there's the leading edge of the front right there. And then we see, I believe that's Jose entering the picture. Let me double check that. Yeah, that appears to be Jose for sure. Let's see what the European model's got for Jose. Doesn't go that far out. But the GFS bringing that into the Block Island, Rhode Island, Massachusetts area around the 20th. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. This looks to be transitioning to extratropical. You can see the dew points in the middle of the circulation in the 60s there. And let's see, after that, yeah, it looks like we get a blast of cold air around the 20th. You can see that coming into the central U.S. This is, of course, about 300 hours out, but this is going to be a taste of fall coming southward around the 21st, 22nd. Pretty good low pressure area there in Illinois. And looks like a cool pattern in about 2 or 3 weeks here. All right, let me take a look at the chat, see what we have going on. Ron Chalfant says, don't forget to click the like button. And also, yeah, Patreon donations. I would absolutely appreciate Patreon donations because I am struggling. I'm struggling to get higher speed internet where I am out here. And I talked to Windstream Business, and they gave me prices anywhere from about $300 up to $500 to get symmetric DSL out here. And we're getting close to the level of donations where I can get that. However, this is a contract, and it's a 2-year contract to bring that kind of internet out here. So I've got to make sure those donations are in place, and we're almost there. Anything you can donate would be very helpful. So, and I am going to be doing the live cast Saturday night, marathon live cast as this comes on shore, and Patreon donations will help keep things going. Maybe it'll help me get a pizza out here Saturday night. Let's see here. Yeah, if this is the Brian Ray that I know, I used to work with him in Korea at the 607th Weather Squadron. That's basically the forecast center for Korea. I worked there many years ago with Brian, and we did programming work together, and we also saw a few typhoons when we worked there. Brian Ray does say I-95 northbound is packed. Dwayne Ward is disagreeing with the European model. He says it shows a weaker storm 12 hours out, while we watch it intensify to a current rate of 2 to 3 millibar drops per hour. Let me bring the storm back up here. There we go. There's a look at the storm. Justin says some neighborhoods just now coming in above water, others remain flooded. I'm kind of lost. I don't know if that's talking about Texas there. I know Justin is in the Houston area. Chris Hayes says European intensification may be off, but that might not affect the track that much, and it's still agreeing with the landfall area. And yeah, personally, I see some pretty good consistency with the models, bringing it into the southern Florida area, into that Key Largo area. And I think we can pretty much count on a big problem there in southern Florida. Justin says our federal deficit is going to be pretty extreme this year with 2 major hurricanes. Andrew Hotchkiss says, did Tim cover sea surface temperature yet? I covered the OHC. I put a few panels up for that, but we can take a look at sea surface temperatures. And let me bring that up. I'm trying to remember who has the best sea surface temperatures. I'm thinking possibly NESDIS. Yeah, OSPO. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so yeah, if you go to ospo.noaa.gov, you can get into the sea surface temperature charts, and let me bring that up. September 7th. Coral Tri. No, that's not the right one. These are temperature anomalies. So we're actually looking at 1.5 Celsius degrees above normal. I don't know if I can get actual observed temperatures, but let me take a look real quick. Ocean color, ocean heat content, we looked at that already. I'll just bring that up one more time. Yeah, there's the OHC, a little bit of a higher area right here around the southern Bahamas. So that makes me wonder if we're going to get some strengthening as it passes this area right here. Wish that data was a little bit higher resolution. And then sea surface temperatures. This is not a very good scale here, but they are pretty high. Looks like they are kind of spiked in this area right here around the Bahamas. And looking at the scale, that appears to be on the 83 to 84 degree Fahrenheit range, possibly 85 there. So these are some very warm sea surface temperatures. That's going to be quite a bit of fuel for IRMA here as it moves towards Florida. Carl Burkhoff says, remember to like. People like tropicaltidbits.com, so that's another place to look. Impacts over Georgia are what Carl is concerned about. Yep, there's problems likely all the way up the coast, up into the Carolinas possibly. Burl H says, thanks for the information on steering, and I'll go back over that here very shortly for those of you who missed it. Many variables at play with the models from Ryan there. People asking Ryan. Ryan is down there in Florida, southern Florida. People asking him if he can set up a live cam. So, yeah, definitely. If he can set that up, you know, we'll take a look at that later on. Eric Hall says, my sister evacuated because fire. We are being evacuated because of hurricane. 6 people lost their homes, including her best friend in Ogden, Utah. Sorry to hear that. For the big live stream, I will be here to help moderate. Yeah. Thank you, Carl. And yeah, we will be planning on doing that Saturday night, marathon live cast. 60 viewers tonight. Yep. Conservatard says Bitcoin, Ethereum is best way for donations, and yeah, I will gladly take Bitcoin. I do have a Bitcoin account, so just email me if you want to do that. I am a supporter of Bitcoin there. Patreon is a no-go for a lot of people ideologically because of censorship concerns. That's true, and let me give you one other place to donate if you want to do that. You can do it directly to me. Go to weathergraphics.com/pay. This is a direct payment link, so if you just want to send in money directly without going through a middleman who's taken a cut, you can do that. Of course, I guess Visa and MasterCard would be taking a cut there too, but anyway, that's another option for you. I'm going to reload this frame to make sure we've got the latest. Let me see here. Yeah, that is the latest. That's 8:30 right there. So we've got the storm. This is the Turks and Caicos Islands taking the brunt of the eye wall there. This is going to have some of the highest wind velocities in the storm, and I think the results, what we're going to see there is going to be absolutely catastrophic. Also, these other islands also in a very bad position as the storm goes just south of those locations. I hope there's been evacuations in that area. Sue asks, I don't understand why IRMA does not right-angle north. What steers it north? It's the strong Bermuda High. The problem is these storms are steered largely by the prevailing wind flow. So throughout much of this area, what we have is kind of an easterly flow because of the effect of the Bermuda High, which is up in this area. And it's just strong enough to keep the storm going, but yes, it is going to recurve as it gets towards Florida. It's going to get away from the impact of that Bermuda High. We have the prevailing westerlies up to the northwest, up in this area right here, and I showed you the strong subtropical jet affecting North Florida. That is what's going to pick up the storm and allow for recurvature. Bermuda High acting on this area here, so what the storm is doing is it's just rounding that subtropical ridge, and then as it gets into northern Florida, it'll come under the influence of that subtropical jet, and then we'll see actual recurvature there. So this is very difficult to forecast empirically or subjectively. We have to rely on the models for this, and fortunately we're seeing very good consistency between the models once we throw out all the outliers. And this is, you can see what I've done here. This is the 0Z or the 12Z run from this morning. And what I've done here is I've thrown out about 25 outliers on this European model. So let me do that real quick. I'll go over this with you, and I'll get rid of this one too. And I'll throw out this outlier. So basically everything that you see here is verifying with the models. Everything is within 8 miles of the actual location. Actually, that's the wrong location. Let me go further. Yeah, there's the actual storm. So let me throw out a few of these outliers. I'm going to cut this down even more. Going to get rid of this one. Going to throw out the garbage. Okay, so this is pretty reasonable here, and the storm located here at this spot right now, and basically all of the ensemble members, these are the lower resolution European models, all of these are verifying within 8 miles, 11, 12 hours into the run. So what are they doing? Some of those are grazing Cuba, and those land interactions, those are obviously going to disrupt the path if that happens, but pretty good grouping, keeping it out over the straits, and this is what we see for Florida. You can see very tight clustering in that South Florida area. Again, this is the European ensemble members that are verifying the best. A few outliers off to the eastern straits, some in the western straits, or the eastern Gulf, but the majority of them bringing the storm right into the Everglades, the Key Largo area, and that would be bad news for Miami, Homestead, and a lot of those areas that were ravaged by Andrew 25 years ago. And let's look at the GFS one more time. So that little bullseye right there, that's the actual verified location. The GFS ensemble members, there's going to be 20 of those, and what they look like is this here. So these have pretty much all of the same physics and initialization conditions as the main GFS model, except they're run at lower resolution. And there are adjustments made to some of the members individually. So there's pretty good spread when you look at all 20 members. But if we get rid of the outliers, such as, for example, this ensemble member, 75 miles off, 12 hours into the run, we can get rid of that. So we're going to weed out about 10 members, just the same way that we did with the European model. Okay. Just about done here. And I'll probably get rid of this outlier too here. So these are the ones that are all within about 15 miles or so. I'm going to get rid of this one here too. And I found that by doing this, this has given me a much better idea of the track. And what we see here is a little bit of clustering off to the west, but overall, the mean position is in the South Florida area here. So we could see it go a little bit further west if we do have some interaction there with the Cuban coast, but we'll just take a look at things tomorrow and see how things look. The main official NHC forecast. Yeah, there's the official forecast there from NHC. And let me take a look at the chat here. Have almost 70 people in the chat. We're following IRMA this evening as it passes the Turks and Caicos Islands. Yeah, Bitcoin donations, again, just email me if you want to do that. I'll be glad to take that. Mike R. says, with a storm this big, it should bring in a little upwelling to cool off the top layer. Tim should look into a wallet if he can find time. I do have a Bitcoin wallet. Juggalo for Life made it to the stream. Impacts for northern Florida. Concern for that area given the tracks. Well, we're going to see a little bit of... obviously, friction is going to start affecting the storm quite a bit. That's going to lead to filling of the eye there. However, there's a whole lot of angular momentum in the storm. It's going to take quite a while to kill that off, and we don't entrain the dry air until it gets up into the Jacksonville area. So I think we're going to be looking at some very strong winds, possibly maybe Cat 1 up in northern Florida. That would be my guess. Definitely some very high winds, and I think there's going to be quite a bit of, I would say, extensive minor damage up from Orlando up to Jacksonville. Juggalo says his close friend in Florida evacuated from Miami finally, as in they evacuated well. They just got out in Florida and headed to Texas. Jason there, storm doctor, good to see you on here. He may do a write-up in the near term about health impacts from the storm. And as far as health impacts, I went through the Norman tornado back in 2010. Our neighborhood was hit, and my neighbors lost part of their house, and their neighbors further over, their house was completely swept clean. And there's some psychological impacts too. I myself had survivor's guilt problems, and it's kind of strange what it is. I didn't realize what it was when it was happening, but it really affects you when you sit there and your house is fine and your neighbors are have all their stuff gone. So yeah, there's definitely some psychological impacts with these devastating events there, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what Jason has later on. People losing it with all the anxiety there from Ryan. Somebody talking about a shooting. Folks just can't handle the stress. Airlines canceling flights going out because of pilot time limits. That's very unfortunate. I would hope that we would get the National Guard in to airlift AMC with their C-17s. I don't see why they can't send some of those planes down to assist with the evacuation there. People are really teetering on the edge. What map are you looking at to track the forecast models? That's going to be tropicalatlantic.com. I can take you there. If I can get my window back. Yeah, okay, there it is. Sorry. Lost my browser window. Okay, tropicalatlantic.com. So at the very top, we've got a link for IRMA, and that'll take you there. You can look at it on the Google Maps display here, or you can import it into Google Earth. And they've also got pressure diagrams, and you can take a look at the intensity forecast. So, for example, pressure diagrams, they're going to be looking like this here. And what's important here is the trend. Some of the models, like the coamps, I've seen this last night too, coamps going for gradual filling. I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe somebody can explain that. Coamps also filling. But the other models, the other dynamic models, the HMON, going for very strong deepening. And it's been very aggressive with this in the past. This brings it down into the 870s. The GFS going for very gradual deepening down to 905 at the 66-hour point. That's going to be around the time that it is approaching Florida. Similar with HWRF. A little bit of filling there at the 36-hour point and deepening. Okay. Then that's going to be the main thing right there. I wish we had the European model to look at, but let's see here. This is basically showing us that at around the 60-hour point, the storm will likely be at its deepest phase here. So let me bring it up to the 60-hour point. You can see where the storm is. That's 60 hours right there. So the storm will probably be at its deepest in the next 3 days as it approaches the Florida coast there. So things are looking very serious at this point. The only thing I think that'll save us is of course a deviation to the left or right, and we just don't know at this point. But the consensus of the best models here is landfall in the southern Florida area, pretty close to what NHC has here, maybe a tad to the west is what I'm thinking here. And we're just not going to know for sure until we get new data tomorrow, and then we'll just go and do it again. And I hope, I can't remember where I saw this diagram. Let me pull this up. It's pretty funny. Give me just a second here. Yeah, here it is. This is the cycle of hurricane forecasting, and I saw this on Facebook. I don't know where it was from, but I will gladly give credit if anybody knows who made this. But it kind of shows you the cycle as you go through forecasting, looking at the NHC updates, the GFS, and a lot of stress there in between. All right, so let me take a look at chat, and we'll start wrapping things up. Cthulhu says, my son and I both have some PTSD from both tornado and fire events. Would be happy to discuss that with you. Ron Chalfant says, thank you, Tim, for that. Fun with Tech says, can you explain the labeling on the path models called early and late? I'm not sure what we're talking about here. That might have been something I had up earlier. Yeah, sorry, I don't know. You'll probably have to email me because I don't understand there. Big Tom says, my Windows 10 is not opening. Cthulhu was reading about how IRMA has higher winds than some storms with lower pressure due to pressure gradients. And then we're just seeing some discussion there about Windows 7 versus Windows 10. All right, so not much more to talk about. We're just waiting it out and seeing what happens. We'll do the forecast tomorrow night, and I hope we see you then. Give me just a second, and we'll get this all squared away. So thank you for watching, and I hope we will see you tomorrow. Take care.